go back to the presentation and let's have a look at what is DML command. So here we can see DML basically stands for data manipulation language. This DML commands handles all the data manipulation part. Let me give you what is actually data manipulation stands for. Suppose you have a table and now you want to insert some data to your table. How can you do that? Using DML command. Or if you want to get some of the particular data from your database, how can you do that? Using DML command. So this is how DML commands help us, or DML language help us to manipulate our data, right? And it also includes most important parts of SQL. So let's have a look at what are the DML commands we have in MySQL. So we have insert command, we have update and delete command. So when we use the insert command, right? So insert, from the name you can understand that when we need to insert data in the table, that time we need to use insert command. And when do we need to use update command, right? So we use update command if we want to change the table structure or if we want to change some of the data in the existing table. That time we need to use update command. And lastly comes delete. So when we use delete command, so we use delete command when we want to delete a particular data from the database. So we will see first how can you use insert command, and then we will see how can you use DQL command. So basically after using DQL command, we can use update and delete command as well. And we will do all the commands practically in MySQL workbench. So let's go and see how can you use insert command to insert data in your database. So you can see I have already written my command or the language that how can I use insert table. So we know we have a table called student table and we know what are the attributes we have for that particular table, right? So we have student ID attribute, we have student name, course name and email. Now if you want to insert them, you need to write insert and then you need to put into, right? So this is the basic syntax of how can you insert data into your table. Then you need to provide what? You need to provide the table name. My table name is student table. Now in the bracket, I am going to say, okay, what are the attributes I have and what are the attributes values I'm going to give. So I have attributes called student ID, student name, course name and email. So these 4 attributes I'm going to give data for them. Now, whenever you're going to give the data for all of them, you need to write values, right? So in the values after the bracket, you need to provide for the student ID I have provided it is 1. Then for the student name I have provided the name of the student is Prakash. Then course name is C1002. And lastly we will have the attribute called email, that is prakash@gmail.com. So this is how we can use our insert command, right? And like the same way you can write the you can insert thousands of data into your table. Okay, now maybe I'm going to write more data for your convenience, that how can we actually add more data, like millions of data in MySQL, right? Okay, now I'm going to change all the values for them, right? 4, then maybe Shilpi, and then C1106 and then Shilpi@gmail.com or shil123@gmail.com, right? And here again we are going to change the data. So we don't want redundant data. So in that case, try to give all the unique data. But wait, we already have learned about primary key. In the next step, I will show you how actually we can use primary key. For that, it reduces the redundancy of the data. And every time it makes sure that your rows value or your rows data is unique, right? Firstly, have a look at what are the commands we have and how can we use that commands. Then we will go for making a table with the key concept we have learned, right? Now, I am going to write Rima and the course ID should be unique, right? Yes. So this is how we are going to add some of the new entries, these are actually known as entries as well, right? So data we have inserted, that is known as entries when you go for industry level. So that time they call these data as entries, right? So they, and maybe this is 8 and this, right? So in this case, we are going to use only the insert command. After learning some of the different SQL commands, we will go for using update and delete command as well, right? Okay. Now let me just run this. Yes, you can see you got a message that one row is affected. When you got this message that one row is affected, that means your query get executed, and this is already stored in your data. But wait, I have inserted the data. How can you see that, like in what manner my data gets executed or my data gets stored, right? So that time the DQL commands come into the picture. So let's have a look at what is DQL and what does it stands for, right? So let's go back to the presentation and have a look at what is DQL command. Now we will have a look at the types of command in MySQL, the DQL one. So basically DQL stands for data query language, and this DQL used to make a queries on data within schema objects. The main focus on DQL command is to get some schema relation based on the query passed into it. And we have one command under DQL, that is called select. This select command is the best or is the key for all the query, you can say, right? So whenever you want to fetch data from your database, you need to use select commands. So let's go to the MySQL workbench and let's have a look at how can we use select command. Now we are going to use select command. So I need to write select, right? Then what I am going to write? Maybe if you want to get one particular column or attribute from your data set, you need to specify that. Maybe for my case, I want student ID. All the student ID I want to see, right? Okay. From, then you need to write a from command. So this is basically where you want to fetch the data. From which table? I want to fetch the data from student table, right? Okay, let me execute that. Yes, you can see I have got all the data for student ID. Now I want to see the course ID as well. So in that case, or maybe the email. So in that case, I need to write email and then I need to execute the same command. So you can see we have got the result for student ID and email both. Let me just minimize that. Yes. So you can see we have got this. Now, if you are going to say, okay, I want to see the course name as well, right? So samely, you need to write course name, the attribute name. Be sure whenever you are going to write the attribute name, they are perfectly correct. Otherwise, it will not fetch the data. Okay. So let me execute that. Yes, you can see I have got the result, right? Student ID, email and course name. Now wait, I want to see all the data, not the particular attributes data. How can I do that? Do I need to write all the data, all the attributes, each of them, like every time I need to write all the attributes name? This is hectic, right? But no, you don't need to do that. What you need to do, you need to write just a star, right? This star is basically fetch all the columns from the data set or the data from the table, right? So I need to write select start from student table. Let me execute that. Yes, you can see I got all the attribute I have. Sorry. Okay. So all the attributes I have in my table, right? So you can see I got student name, course name, student ID and email, right? Okay. So basically if you drag this, you can change the column name according to your uses, right? So basically I got student name, student ID, course name and email. So this is how we use our select command, right? Now we will have a look at the next command we have in MySQL. So let's go back to the presentation and let's have a look at what we have in the next. Now we will have a look at the next command called DCL. This DCL command is basically try to control your data, and this stands for data control language. Basically it deals with the rights and permission of the database. This works for controlling part of the data, and if you want to control your data, you need to use DCL commands. So let's have a look at what are the commands we have under DCL. So basically we have grant and revoke. Two types of commands we have. So basically what grant stands for, right? So this grant command provide users access privilege to database. So if you want to give some access to that some particular user, you can give them using grant command. When comes the revoke is basically if you don't want to give your database access privilege to some particular person, that time you can withdraw that privilege using revoke command, right? So this is what stands for DCL. Now let's go back to MySQL and let's have a look at how can we use delete command that comes under DML, right? So we will have a look at how can you use DML commands. So here we are going to use delete. But how can you use delete? And what's the difference between delete and truncate as well, right? Okay, so here I'm going to show you the truncate command that I have said. I will show you in the later part. Okay, so and the delete we are going to see what and how delete is also working. So first let's have a look at delete. So how can you write delete? So first you need to write delete command, then you need to write from, but where? From where you need to delete, right? You need to write the table name. So for my case, table name is student table. Let me just execute that. Okay, fine. So basically when I was trying to delete my table, that time I was getting a safe update mode error. So what do you need to do in that time, right? So if your SQL workbench or MySQL workbench is a safe update mode, that time you cannot delete anything like without any clause, right? Without any condition. So in that case, what I was doing, so that time you need to write a command. What command you need to write? You need to write set SQL safe updates equals to 0. So basically when you are going to use this command and execute this, you can see 0 rows affected, but your command get executed, right? Now let's have a look at what we have in our table, right? So using select star from student table, we are going to check that. So you can see we have this, that student ID, student name, course name and email, right? Now what I need to do, I need to just execute my delete command. Again, how can you write the delete command? We need to write delete that command, and from where you need to delete? I need to delete from student table, right? So I am going to execute that. Yes, you can see that 6 rows affected. Why it's showing 6 rows affected? Because you have 6 rows in your table. So it's got deleted. So let's have a look at actually it's deleted or not, right? Okay, let me use the same query, that select star from student table. I already told you guys that when this select command is basically your like pathway or your everything when you want to retrieve your data, right? So anyway, if you want to retrieve your data, you want to see your data, if you want to manipulate your data, you need to use the select command, right? Now let me just execute that. Yes, you can see I have my table structure, right? But I don't have the data under my table. So this is how delete commands work. Now let me again insert all my data and try to execute truncate command, right? Okay, I am again going to execute all the insert command that I have inserted before. Okay, so let me just execute that. Yes, you can see 1 row affected. Now what we need to do, we need to again use select star from student table to understand actually data got inserted or not. So as we got the green tick, that means our data got inserted. That's for the like second checking. So you can see we got total 7 records in our data. Now we are going to use the truncate table. How can you use truncate table, right? So using truncate table, you need to write truncate, the command, then table, from where table you need to, like which table you need to truncate, right? So the table name, for my case, student table. Now let me execute that. Now I already have shown you guys that in the truncate table schema is there. But what is got deleted, right? So basically, again, we are going to use select star command. That select star from student table. Okay. Okay, I need to go down. Okay, I just changed my, okay, fine. Now, what I need to do, I need to write select star from student table, right? Let me just execute that. Yes, you can see I have this table schema, not the data under table. So this is how delete and truncates work. But wait, what's the difference between delete and truncate? If we can do the same thing using delete, why do even need to go for truncate? So let me give you an example. What's the difference between delete and truncate? Now I will give you few examples that what are the difference between delete and truncate. So the basic difference between delete and truncate is when you use delete, it is used to delete specific data, right? Here I didn't give any conditions. Whenever we are going to give some conditions, maybe a particular row you want to delete, right? So that time you need to go for using delete command. But when comes the truncate, it's to delete the entire database of the table. So if you want to maybe delete up one particular row from your table, that time you cannot use truncate. You need to use delete command. Now let's have a look at when we have where clause. So I will give you an example where we are going to use where clause and what actually that where clause stands for. So when we use where clause, with the where clause we can use delete. But for the truncate time, whenever you are going to use truncate command, that time you cannot use a where clause. So basically where clause help us to give condition to do some particular work. But as we know in the truncate is not going to listen any condition. It's going to delete all the records from your data, right? Now comes the locking part. So when it comes to the delete, it locks the table row before deleting the row, right? But in the case of truncate, it locks the entire table. Okay. Now comes the rollback. So what is rollback? So rollback is basically if you want to roll back your data. But using delete, you can roll back the changes, whatever you have made. But using truncate, you cannot roll back your changes, right? Now the performance for delete is really slow, but for the case of truncate, it is faster than delete. So these are the basic difference between truncate and the delete command. Now let's go back to the presentation again and let's have a look at what other type of commands we have in our MySQL. Now we will have a look at the other command type we have in MySQL. That is TCL command. But what this TCL stands for, right? TCL is basically transaction control language. It helps you to control the transaction. We have commit. So why do we use commit command? Commit is basically used to commit a transaction. Then comes the rollback. Roll back a transaction for any error occurs. If you have any error, that time you can use rollback transaction command. Now comes a save point. So basically save point uses save point within a transaction. If you want to create a save point within a transaction, you need to use the save point command. Then lastly, the command we have for TCL, that is save transaction, is basically used to specify the characteristics for the transaction.